Between 1936 and 1939, Spain was immersed in a bloody civil war. Tensions between the democratically elected leftist government and fascist sympathizers in the army festered during the tumultuous 1930s. In July 1936, General Francisco Franco led a coup against the government. The war waged on for 3 bloody years and would claim 500,000 lives. Worldwide, it was seen as a struggle between the two conflicting ideologies of liberalism and fascism. Fighters from all over the world flocked to Spain to fight for either side. Among those fighting for the Republicans were the more than 3,200 Americans of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. However, the question remains, what motivated these young Americans to fight a foreign war in a faraway land? For some, it was their left-leaning political views and abhorrence to fascism. For African-American James Yates, his personal reasons for joining the Abraham Lincoln Brigade were shaped by his experiences in the Depression-era Jim Crow South and in labor protests in northern cities. He was the son of a sharecropper family in the cotton fields of Mississippi. There, he experienced the harsh racial realities of black code laws and lynchings. The Great Depression drove Yates to Chicago and later New York looking for work. Here, he became engulfed in the ongoing labor unrest and involved in union organizing. He was also exposed to socialist and communist ideas, as well as the ideas of Harlem Renaissance writers like W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. These ideas shaped his political views, and by the outbreak of war in Spain, Yates was fervently anti-fascist, and his reasons for joining the Abraham Lincoln Brigade were steeped in leftist ideals.
The poor, the peasants, the workers and the unions, the socialists and the communists, together had won an election against the big landowners, the monarchy and the right-wingers and the military. It was the kind of victory that would have brought black people to the top levels of government if such an election had been won in the USA. A government in Spain was dividing its wealth with the peasants. Unions were being organized in each factory and social services were being introduced. Spain was the perfect example for the world I dreamed of. Now, all of it was about to be wiped out. The former rulers were determined to retake power. They were being supported by fascists all over the world, including, I was sure, many in the United States. How could I not volunteer?
The Abraham Lincoln Brigade was the first integrated military unit in American history, and Yates would become one of 100 African Americans that fought in Spain. After being injured in combat, he returned to the United States and became a proponent for black civil rights and played an active role in the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Growing anti-Semitism in Europe and the United States motivated other Americans like Albert Prago, a New York City Jew, to go to Spain. His parents were Latvian immigrants who experienced rampant anti-Semitism in the old country. Prago, very aware of violent anti-Semitic rhetoric in fascist Italy and Germany, felt like fascism must be stopped. When war broke out in Spain, he was one of several Jewish Americans to volunteer for the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. He explains why so many Jews chose to fight in Spain by writing,
"All of them had learned of fascism in Europe and saw obvious signs in this country of our own brands of fascism tied to an old racism and bigotry. Nor was anti-Semitism a stranger within the democracy we enjoyed. It was no historic accident that so many Jews were members of, or sympathetic to, the Communist Party and other left organizations, and that they constituted such a large proportion of the volunteers."
In Spain, Prago served as the Anglo-American editor of the International Brigade's daily information bulletin. After being injured in battle, he returned to the United States and would become a history professor at Cornell University. For Americans like James Yates and Albert Prago, It was their individual political convictions shaped by the experience of living in the United States during the Great Depression that motivated them to fight in the Spanish Civil War. Growing labor and communist movements, the ideas of the Harlem Renaissance, and the threat of growing anti-Semitism created a generation of Americans willing to fight against fascism in a foreign country. Although the Republicans ended up losing the war, the members of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade will be remembered for their role in the fight against fascism.